Hey guys, welcome back to Reignited and our budget race truck build that is powered by the Atlas 4200, the ameri-barra, the American 2JZ. It's time for my favorite part of any project. We're working on the turbo kit today. Stay with me. All right, let's talk a little bit about the components that we're going to use here. This is all stainless steel construction. We have, first off, we have our laser cut flange here. A really nice piece. The only thing that's kind of weird about it is that it has this super odd flange inlet shape, and it's kind of weird to me because the openings, the ports on the head themselves don't exactly match this shape, so I'm not sure why they chose such a unique shape for it. The nice thing is they offer it with these little stub flanges, the little tubing that is actually already formed into the correct shape to fit into those ports, and then it adapts to a normal round tube from there. So very glad we opted for that. Now, I have a bunch of stainless U-bends here. Now, all these bends came from Ace Race Stainless. Now, this is not a sponsored thing at all. I just love working with this company. They are extraordinarily fast. You put in your order, and generally next day, it's in the mail, like it's right off the bat, and obviously the product is always very good, very nice to work with. 16 gauge, so it's real thick. 304 stainless here. Excited to be working with this. I got 12 of these bends, and then I have 6 of these tight radius 90-degree bends. I think those are going to come in handy as well. Then we have a Summit external wastegate for this thing. Nice and simple again. We're trying to keep this thing as budget as we possibly can. So that's what we've got working. Oh, don't want to forget, we have the Vibrant 6-into-1 cast stainless collector. This thing's really cool, and it's actually a lot cheaper than I had anticipated it would be. Real quick, I just want to tell you about the turbo itself that we're using. This is from VS Racing. It is their 6267 turbo. It is a cast turbo, and it is V-band inlet and outlet here on the turbine side. It's 2.5-inch inlet and a 3-inch outlet. Now, this is a great little turbo because it's actually very affordable, but also I think it's going to be big enough for what we're doing here. Time will tell if it is a little bit too small. The turbine housing is the larger one that they offer. It is the 1.01 AR size, so we're gonna have to see, but I think this is a great starting point to at least see where we can get to with this project. Here's a closer look for you at the actual somewhat odd shape of these ports and this flange. And you can see here with the tube, it's already been flattened into the correct shape, but again, it is a little bit long. So right now it sticks through the flange, which obviously isn't gonna work. So we're gonna cut these down. That way they're all fit completely flush, and then get them in there and get them tacked in place. All right, we got the turbo flange installed there. Just to give you guys an idea of what I'm thinking the collector will go somewhere in this area here. There'll be a little turn up on the end for the turbo to sit right about here. That's kind of the initial goal. Now, the first tube here, I'm actually gonna run it off of cylinder 1. We're gonna do that one first because it's one of the tighter bends here. And I'm not exactly sure which of these runners I wanna run it into yet. Now, when it comes to fabrication, something you may not realize is that a decision you make early on can then affect all of the decisions that come after that. So the early ones are the ones you need to put the most focus and effort into to make sure you're making a good decision. That way you're not putting yourself in a complicated spot later on down the line. Now, with this first runner that I'm going to do here, I need to make sure that I'm leaving plenty of room for all the other runners to go. And even though I'm not sure exactly which point of that collector I'm going to attach it to just yet, everything else after that is going to be based off this initial runner. So I really need to take my time and get the routing exactly right. Another thing too to notice, I'm not concerned about having these runners equal length. It's a turbo manifold, it really doesn't matter. I would like to have them somewhere in the realm of being close to each other, but it's not something I'm actually focusing on. Just want to give you guys a quick insight into what I'm doing here. You see I have this hose clamp that I've actually cut sections out of, little openings. And what that does, that allows me to put it onto the tube itself, and then I can rotate it to the correct position. The hose clamp keeps that tube concentric so that it's perfectly even all the way around, and then you have the openings there where I can actually tack it into place. Now, they have fancier tools available that will do this same sort of thing, but if you have hose clamps, that's a decent way to do it. All right, got some progress here. Got our first runner. You can see how it tucks down there by the motor mount and then goes down into the bottom of the collector there. I think that's going to be a good start. More importantly, it actually places our collector so we can actually do the rest of the runners. So now I need to decide what order I'm going to do them in. That way I can get them somewhat equal length. But essentially you can kind of see the vision here, and then this will kind of turn up right here, and you're going to have the turbo right here, and also probably the wastegate next to it here. So both the downpipe and the screamer pipe will come down right out the back here. So should be pretty straightforward, but really excited with that first runner. Let's keep going. Here we go. We've got 2 of the tubes down here. I'm really liking the look of that so far. Not sure if I'm just going to keep continuing. I think we'll go 3rd cylinder right up to here. And then I'm not sure if we're just going to keep rotating around or if I'm going to switch up the pattern here. It all depends on how it looks as I'm building it. But so far, really happy with those 2 runners. Okay, feeling really good about this. We have our 3rd runner in place. Really like how that's going. Now we're not going to be able to complete that same pattern all the way back because that's going to take up the room where our downpipe goes. Plus, I kind of don't like the uniformity of it anyway, so we're going to switch up the pattern here. We're going to do something different. Not exactly sure what's yet, but this is the end of it today. We'll jump back on this tomorrow. And we're back the next morning here. One thing I want to encourage you guys to do with fabrication is to step away from it while you're working on it. I know sometimes we get really caught up because we only have a specific amount of time to work on things. But especially when it comes to fabrication, because you're relying on creativity, creativity isn't something you can really force a lot of times. It just kind of has to come to you. So when you're working on stuff like this, if you have an opportunity, I recommend step away for a little while and then come back to it and see if you still like it or not. If you don't, then you can make changes at that time to make it more the style that you're actually going for. If you just force it, then you can end up with something that's not quite exactly what you want. I'm happy to say that that is not the case here. Coming back this morning, I still really like the way this thing looks. So now we're gonna move on to cylinder number 4. I still haven't decided exactly how I wanna run this thing, so I'm gonna stare at this thing for a little while. Hopefully that inspiration will strike. So I ended up deciding to do cylinder number 5 first, and I'm glad that I did because I'm really happy with the way that turned out. I just wasn't quite sure yet to do with cylinder number 4. Now I have a better idea with this runner wrapped in here. Now, what I could do here is run number 4 just to right here, and then number 6 to right here. It'd be very simple, but I think that would ruin the aesthetic of the overall look here. I'm going for kind of a bowl of spaghetti look here. That's the point to it. So I think simplistic runners really ruin that. And cylinder number 6 is done. You can see we wrapped it around here, little tuck right there. So pretty happy with that. Now this one, cylinder 4, has to come up and over, maybe back just a little bit. Then we'll cut back this way. Probably have the same little jog in it than this one has. All right, we got our final runner finished up here. You can see she comes up, back just a little bit, and then dog legs into the collector. I actually love it. I know it looks a little different here with just the one runner coming up like that. But my thing is I'm as OCD as the next guy, but when it's unable to make something fully symmetrical, I feel like you need to go all the way the other direction and make it as asymmetrical as possible. So that's what I like to do with my turbo manifolds. Really give them something of a unique look. Like I said, this thing was supposed to be the showpiece of the engine bay. I love it. I think it's turned out absolutely awesome. Made some more progress here. So I have to use a reducer right here down to 2" because that is the V-band for the turbo itself. So went ahead and kind of angled it a little bit this way just to give me enough room. There's really not a lot of room in here. Were I to do it again, maybe I would move the collector back just a little bit, but then you push the runners back. So honestly, I'm actually really happy with it the way it is. It's just the turbo is kind of tucked up real tight right here in the front. You'll see that in just a moment. But went ahead and got the wastegate on there as well. Not exactly the greatest wastegate priority. I tried to give it a little bit of a curve help here, but it is a big opening. This is a 50 mil opening. You can see, I mean, that's a lot of exhaust gas. So I think that it'll probably work just fine. We'll see what happens once we actually run this thing, if there is any boost creep or not. I kind of doubt it just at 14 pounds, but it should be okay. Anyway, still really liking the look of it. Let's get that turbo on here and the wastegate on here. And at that point, we can do the wastegate dump and also the downpipe as well. I mean, I still think it looks pretty darn cool. You got that turbo sitting there, loud and proud in the engine bay with the wastegate right there. Now, if the wastegate does actually come below the hood line, not by a lot. I may have to notch a little bit of the bracing there, but there just was only so much room in there. So anyway, pretty dang happy with that though. Yeah, pretty tight fit in there. There should be enough room to get a small cone filter on here for when we're doing our dry portion and stuff like that and just running around. I tried to make sure there was enough room to get a cone filter in here, so that should work, much unlike my Magnum. Feeling like I've made some really good progress here. You can see we got our downpipe snaking this way, straight down right through there. I'm pretty happy with this. I think I'm gonna do some minor modifications. I wanna take just a little bit out of this straight section here to kick this curve back just a little bit, give a little bit more air gap here between the tank and this. I'll probably still make a little heat shield for it, but that'll give it a bit more room there. And then this final bend here, I need to just like twist it this way just a touch, just a tiny little bit, but actually pretty happy with that. And then you can see here with the screamer pipe, it's basically gonna come out and kind of just follow the same contour and then go right down the back there. So that's kind of the idea behind it. Really happy with it so far though. I think it looks pretty good, kind of interesting. I mean, there's kind of tubing going everywhere, but I really like that look myself. So I don't know, let me know what you guys think so far. Now I just need to build the screamer pipe here, the wastegate dump tube. Now this is not going to recirculate back into the downpipe like I did with my Magnum. I want this to be an open dump. I want it to be a screamer pipe on this thing because I just think it'll sound more race car, sound cool, and make this thing much more fun to drive because again, it's a race truck. It's not really a daily or anything like that. So the idea is that we're gonna run it here kind of parallel with the downpipe, tuck it back down here somehow, and then just have it dump directly down below the vehicle. That's the thought. We just got to get started building this thing, see how it turns out. Oh man, I am liking this a lot. Went ahead and tried to kind of mimic the look of the downpipe there, and then it rolls back behind our rearmost runner here. And you can see that it drops down underneath the vehicle. I'll show you the bottom here in a minute. Now there will be a couple of bracing points here. There's gonna be a tag that kind of ties these two together right here, and then there'll be a brace on the bottom where it goes straight to the bell housing. So this will have plenty of support on its own. But overall, very happy with how this is coming out. I think it actually looks pretty darn good. Now you would think that my next move here would be to actually finish weld all of this. And that actually would be a great idea, but I just don't feel like doing it right now. So instead we're gonna move on to the radiator assembly here. Now this is a 3-core radiator that is designed to be a stock replacement. However, I cannot put it in the stock location because this engine is so much longer. So I had to cut out the lower radiator support and move it forward quite a bit, call it maybe 4 inches for this whole deal. Now, essentially what I'm gonna have to do here is I'm gonna have to drill some holes in the top of the frame so that this is going to mount directly into the frame rather than the cross member like it did before. However, we have a couple other issues that come with that. Number one is that we have radiator cap up top here. This won't work anymore because it's going to be sitting directly beneath our core support here. So this is going to get cut off. We're gonna cut that there, cap this here. We're gonna go ahead and drill some holes here on the front side of it right here, weld in some AN bungs that will then go to a coolant recovery bottle of some kind, some fashion, whether I make it or not. And that's gonna have a radiator cap on it over here, but this whole entire radiator is going to sit underneath the core support here. So that is our big project for today. Let's see if we can make that happen. Making some progress here. Got those holes drilled in the frame so that the radiator will sit down on its pedestals just like it did factory. You can see how large this radiator is, and it is fitting basically right underneath the core support as I anticipated. It is a very tight fit down here. The wiring for the fan is about maybe 3/8 of an inch away from the crank pulley itself, but I do believe that is going to be enough clearance. Now, I did have to modify our hood latch here as well to bring some rigidity back to our core support here. As soon as I get the intercooler kind of mocked up here, I'm going to build some cross structure in there that'll kind of tie the upper and lower back together again. So that way it'll give that rigidity back. But I think for right now, I'm gonna go ahead and pull the radiator out. We'll go ahead and cap off that filler neck I cut off and also drill and weld for the new weld bungs here on the side. Very nice. Went ahead and got the filler cap all welded up here. I got these new tabs welded on so we can actually connect it to the intercooler mount that I made. And then also I welded on these two 10AN bungs. Now these are going to go to the coolant recovery bottle because the radiator is now not the highest point of the cooling system. So I need to do a separate expansion tank, and that's what these hoses will go to. This will allow for proper bleeding of the cooling system, make it nice and easy when we fill this up. Now I know there's gonna be some of you out there who are saying, why is your intercooler so small on this thing? You're gonna be costing yourself some horsepower. Well, we'll see. We'll have to keep an eye on our intake air temperature, see what they are when we're actually running this thing. But also there was a practical reasons why we went with an intercooler this small, and it's because space constraints, not because of the intercooler itself, but because of the piping. Notice that if I went any wider here, the piping would be out here where the headlights are, and there's just no room to run any tubing through there. In this case, with it narrower as it is, I can tuck it sharply right through the core support here and get it into the engine bay. So definitely there's an actual reason why we went as small as we did. Like I said, we'll see if it actually costs us any horsepower. Next, we get to move on to one of my favorite things there is to do on a turbo kit, and that is the intercooler piping. I just really like the way it snakes through the engine bay and the contrast of the aluminum piping versus the stainless of the turbo kit there. I just think it looks really cool. And also, we're gonna be able to get a good overall look of what the engine bay will look with this thing once all the intercooler piping is in there, because this is the last of the major fabrication for the front end of this vehicle. So it's a big step. I'm excited about it. The next thing we need to do is get this intercooler and radiator back out of there, because I need to clearance the core support even more to get those intercooler pipes to fit through there. Let's get into it. All right, we got them cut out here on both sides here and then cleaned up. And also I had to actually cut some out here where the compressor outlet goes to, because it was a very, very tight angle right here. So I had to cut some of that out. Now I don't really feel bad about turning this core support into Swiss cheese, because from the initial crash damage that happened, all of this was all kind of bent up anyway. So cutting it out, not really that concerned about it. I'm adding in my own bracing, as you can see, to help re-support everything, and once everything's actually finalized in there, it'll be very solid. So not concerned about cutting all that out. Let's go ahead and get that radiator put back in so we can start mocking up our pipes. Now you notice that the bend coming out of the intercooler going through the core here is actually a very tight turn, and a regular just smooth radius bend isn't going to get the job done. So in this case, on either side here, I'm going to be running these tight radius cast aluminum 90-degree bends. Now all the materials in this build, if you haven't been following along, I've been getting these from Ace Race Parts. This is not sponsored, I just happen to love working with these guys. But one thing you'll notice here is that while the bend is correct, it's just not quite long enough to actually feed all the way in to the coupler where we need it to be. So I need to take a short length of aluminum and weld that onto the end of this cast 90 right here. But another problem that comes along with that is that you see that it has this bead here on the end that's actually cast into this piece. That keeps the coupler from blowing off under boost. So if I weld on a straight piece here, I'll no longer have that bead there. So what am I going to do about that? In the old days, there was kind of a few different options. A lot of times what you would do is you would weld basically a bead all the way around the tube, and that still works just fine if you want to do something like that. There was other ways of like crimping a bead into the tube, and this is actually a tool that I made, I don't know, 15 years ago, maybe more. And it's actually part of an exhaust hanger, or sorry, an exhaust clamp on the top side and a washer on the bottom side of these vice grips. And what you do is you very slowly go around the tube, crimping it, and that would make a bead. And it was effective, but it is kind of rudimentary as well. Nowadays, people like to take basically crimping pliers and they'll cut a groove into it, and that way they can crimp all the way around the tube. Again, fully effective, still works, but kind of rudimentary. I'm going a different route. Here we have an actual bead rolling tool. Now this is designed specifically for putting a bead in the end of pipes like intercooler piping and things like that. These things used to be a lot more expensive. The one from Vibrant is still extraordinarily expensive, but this is actually the heavy duty upgraded one, and it was still, I think, $84, something of that nature. So it's affordable now to get an actual tool to do the job properly. So to my mind, it doesn't make sense to go with those rudimentary methods anymore. I think it makes sense to actually get the right tool for the job. I've used this a couple of times already, and I'm actually really happy with the results that it provides. Let me show you this thing in operation. All right, all we do is we slip the piece in here, go ahead and tighten this thing down just enough to where there's some good tension on it, then start rolling. Then add a little bit more tension. And keep doing that until you achieve the bead that you're looking for. And just like that, you have a perfect bead for your pipe. Really nice finish on that. And this is what it looks like when we have that little extension piece welded onto our tight radius 90. Let's go ahead and get this slipped into the intercooler there and continue building our intercooler pipes. Making some really good progress here, guys. Basically, the entire cold side piping is all finished up. And interestingly, this was not the original way I was going to run this piping, but this is why I say I like to leave it open for freedom of expression, essentially, because as I was building it the way I was originally designing it, I just really didn't like the look of it. It wasn't feeling right to me, so I just went ahead and mocked up a few different things, different areas, until something clicked, and in the end, I'm really happy with the way that this turned out versus what I was trying to do, so I'm glad I gave myself that freedom to try something different. Now all we have to do is the hot side here, and I've got most of that put together already. There's just a couple of really tight, intricate bends that need to be done before the hot side's done, but then all of our piping is done, and the majority of our fabrication is finished here on the front side of this vehicle. The last thing I have to do is build that little coolant reservoir here on this side, but that should be fairly straightforward. So this was all kind of the really difficult stuff as far as more time intensive, so hopefully this project is going to move along at a quicker pace at this point. All right, at the end of the episode, we always go over the budget. As you guys know, we're trying to do this all in, including the price of the vehicle, for $6,500. Now, this particular episode, we spent a decent amount of money because I wasn't willing to compromise on doing the engine bay here. I really wanted it to be that showpiece of the vehicle. And even though I could have modified the stock exhaust manifold and made it into a turbo manifold, it just would be very clunky and just not quite the look we're going for. I wanted this thing to stand out. I wanted to be proud of it, and I think we've accomplished that. And I think it was worth spending the money on these materials to make something really cool that I can really stand behind. With that being said, let's get into the budget here. The stainless header flange that came with those little stub pieces, that was $212.85. Now, the 6-in-1 collector was $145. All of the different bends, couplers, clamps, both stainless and aluminum that you saw in this episode, like I said, I got pretty much everything from Ace Race Parts, and that totaled out $952.11, which kind of sounds like a lot of money, but I got a ton of materials from them, so I honestly think that was actually a really good deal on that price. Now, the V-band flanges for the turbo, unfortunately, these are kind of special V-band flanges that only VS Racing sells to go with their turbos, so kind of a weird move on their part, but I get it, but it was an expense that I was not expecting. It was $111.82 for those flanges. Now, the Summit Racing 50mm wastegate, that was $98.99. The Summit blow-off valve was $62.99. The turbo itself was $379, so very budget friendly. And again, the turbo that I have on my Magnum that's 2 years old now, that's also from VS Racing, and it's holding up just fine with no problems. So I feel pretty confident about this turbo holding up as well. The radiator was $135.59, and the intercooler was $77.99. So that puts us at a total for this episode of $2,176.34. Now, if you'll remember from our last episode, the amount of budget we had left was $4,112.67. So if you take away what we did in this episode, what we're left with is $1,936.33. And let me tell you, just running the numbers in my head right now, I'm not sure we're gonna meet our budget goal here of $6,500. I know it's going to be close, but I think we're probably gonna come in over that. But we're gonna keep on pushing here, see what we can do. I gotta tell you guys, this is by far the coolest turbo kit that I've made today. I just absolutely love the way this thing looks and has turned out. Sure, I've got about 100 hours of welding here left to do to actually get this thing all welded up, but man, I absolutely love it. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Again, we've gotta be ready for this event at the end of September, and I'd love to have some time to really test beforehand. So things should be moving really quickly from here forward. All right, with that being said, I appreciate you guys watching. We'll see you next time on Reignited.